right, well, let's welcome John Water here to talk about 20 years of Spotter Network. If you don't know John, he is the president of Spotter Network. He also is the head of IT, right, at Hopkins School District. And also one of the couple of members that developed the Hopworth, which kind of an interesting little local model. And then also used to run what was the Minnesota Skywarn Workshop, and then later on the Minnesota Severe Storms Conference. So welcome to John, and if you got anything to add to that, go right ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Jared. Well, it's good to see a lot of familiar faces in the room tonight. This will be the third time I've given this presentation, and there's kind of, I think it'll probably be 3 different versions a little bit here. First time I gave it was at the Central Iowa Severe Storms and Doppler Radar Conference, and I'll say like kind of the spicy version. For that was like the honey barbecue version. Then I gave the version to a private group with a whole bunch of meteorologists and a bunch of other folks. I think we gave like the ghost pepper version that time. And then tonight maybe try to go for like buffalo version tonight or something like that. So talk about a little stuff, because we do get into a few things in here that, yes, there has been a share of controversy around that. There has been a share of folks that, hey, we all have disagreements, and things go different directions with that. So as Jared mentioned, kind of my background in meteorology, I went to St. Cloud State University with a planned major in meteorology and political science, with the plan to go into climate policy work. Was kind of the master plan at that point, back right in the late 1990s. At a time of that I would have graduated, I basically graduated right out into surprise, like what we might be seeing today, into what ended up being year 2 of a 5-year federal hiring freeze. So there was 0 jobs in that whole area. I ended up doing work for a couple years, actually for the Department of Energy, on assignment to the U.S. Air Force, doing upper atmospheric dispersion modeling, doing some of that stuff for them. Kind of my claim to fame there, I get to talk about, is I was able to run simulations on what at that time was the fastest supercomputer in the world. So getting to do some interesting work for those folks. Then really looking at, hey, student loans are coming due, you got to start working for other stuff too, like on a sustainable piece. Because the Department of Energy is almost all consultants, even when you're working directly for them, and then they just keep you onto these like stints on a long-term, like working for an hour every 6 months just to keep your security clearance current and all that sort of stuff. So still do a little bit of stuff with them every once in a while, updating some of the work that we did back around the turn of the century, or just after the turn of the century there. As Jared mentioned, so my day job, I'm the Executive Director of Information Services for a large school district here in the Twin Cities metro area, which has been a hell of a job the last couple weeks here with some of the stuff that's been going on. So, definitely 40 hours a week is, I'm sure, what someone would somewhere. But I love the work. It's really interesting, after the winter that we've had of really supporting our students, then coming into some of these pretty significant incidents here this spring. It's been a tough year for sure. I also have to talk about some of the other work that I'll just mention here. Today, being the day before the 15-year anniversary of the Joplin, Missouri tornado. That's another tornado that kind of set a pretty significant direction in my own career, doing some work around that because of my other stuff that I did, helping to set some standards, following up with the damage survey from that storm that came into NIST standards that now became what is known as the ICC 500 storm shelter standards, which has now been adopted by the state of Minnesota as a required building for any public buildings of an occupancy of 50 or more. which that has rounded all the way back around to my work in the school district. That we passed a referendum this past November, $140 million referendum to do some significant remodels to our schools. You know, like many schools right in the metro area, most of our buildings were built in the 50s, and really that's not what classrooms need to look like right now. And so doing some significant remodeling, adding on to a couple of our schools, and all of those have to be ICC 500 rated storm shelters. So we will now have storm shelter rating facilities at many of our schools, which is kind of, for me, almost a full circle thing that now it's 15 years of work since those standards kind of got the genesis coming out of the job that we're doing. So some work there. Tonight, I'll be talking about what I would probably say is more of a passion project at this point of really Spotter Network. I've been the president there for about 13 years now. And I'll talk a little bit just about the kind of the inception of the network, what it looks like today, some of the fun things that have come up over the years as well while we've been building this out. So really 20 years as of April. So in April is when April 19th actually is the day we turned 20 years old. So does anybody here not know what Spotter Network is? Do I need to do like the who actually are we piece, or can we jump right on in? All right. No one has at least wanted to admit they don't know what Spotter Network is.
I got my card.
All right. So what is Spotter Network? So Spotter Network is the only national storm spotting network. I think a lot of people think that Skywarn is like an organization. That's not the case at all. Skywarn is really actually a national concept that is marketed by the National Weather Service that exists in local implementations. So whether it's Twin Cities, Metro Skywarn, whether it's Stearns County Skywarn, whether it's Solon Valley Skywarn, these different Skywarn organizations that exist pretty much independently across the United States. And when we came to the National Weather Service to talk about actually doing a national network for Skywarn, for them was kind of like that's not what we made this for. So it really is, there certainly have been some challenges and kind of some exciting times that we've really figured out with the National Weather Service as we've gone along. So as you know, what it really is, geolocated spotters and spot positions, as well as spotter reports. We now are over 100,000 members. We're actually about 112,000 members right now. So that's really over that 20 years, and really getting that location data along with storms. This is an OG style. This is like one of the original pictures from when we first had our place files available in Gibson Ridge. So this is actually about a 15-year-old image from when we really got started. So founding and purpose, why did we do this? What actually happened with this? So Spotter Network was founded in 2006 by Tyler Allison. So you may remember the firm called Allison House. Tyler founded that big weather data firm. Tyler is now, as of this year, completely divested out of Allison House, so that's been renamed to Weather Pulse. So that's where you may have seen some of that change happen this year as well. Now Ryan is running that completely now. So why did we do this? What were we really looking to do? We really wanted to have, again, a national organization to serve the National Weather Service and emergency management. We wanted a way to introduce some new technologies in. When this, 2006 was still pretty much the dominance of ham radio around severe storm reporting. Internet was still, I don't know, any folks who've been chasing for a while. This is back to the era of, right, you had to have, right, like the king of the, what was it, the King of Hearts modem that you had to run on your laptop. You actually still clicked, the phone cord in over to your laptop and all that kind of fun stuff with this. The little cord that was about this long that cost like $170 to connect to your cell phone to make all of that kind of stuff work. So you have to remember like the era that we were living in when we first started this. The concept again was really to bring bring geolocation information together and that automatic position reporting information, get all of that into one spot in service to the National Weather Service. In 2009, we added our training component, which we run on the open source learning management system platform called Moodle. And then we originally were incorporated in Illinois. Later, we're now incorporated here in the state of Minnesota. And we have received our 501c3 nonprofit designation. And I think people forget this. I still get asked this at like storm chaser conferences and stuff, like how much money we make. That would be awesome if we make money. We definitely do not make money. 100% volunteer. The only reason that we're still alive is because of the donation in goods and services that Allison House, now Weather Pulse, gives us so that we can actually survive, especially during severe weather season, where we have to do some pretty significant growth through elastic cloud to actually make our services still function. We have to really, build out our server farm just to make that work, on a day-to-day basis. It can become very expensive. It costs in the tens of thousands of dollars just for our network to actually run every year. So, and our income is usually a couple $100 a year that people toss our way via PayPal donations. So we have to really think about what that looks like. As part of our continuing learning, we do have the Spotter Network Advisory Council, which is made up of folks from a pretty broad range of backgrounds. Here I just kind of list everybody with this. We're excited to have kind of a broad-ranging list of folks that we do have. You can see everywhere from kind of just weather enthusiasts to emergency managers to National Weather Service folks, to storm chasers, really trying to cover the gamut of what most folks that would be using or participating kind of in the hobby of storm chasing, the science of meteorology, and also kind of that public good work as well. So have a pretty broad range. There are two National Weather Service liaisons that I talk with often. There's Rick Smith, who's the warning coordination meteorologist down in Norman, Oklahoma, and then Al Patrica, who now is up in Alaska. Al, I've known for since before Spotter Network, actually. He used to be in Minnesota, then was a long career at the Science and Operations Officer at the National Weather Service office in Goodland, Kansas. He then went over to Camp Sioux, the Kansas City, Pleasant Hill office. And now he is up in Alaska. So that's where all of a sudden you go into aviation and start working on volcanic ash, which we know is a big freaking deal for aviation, really watching where that volcanic ash is. So the challenges involved with that. This is probably one of the more colorful parts of the history of Spotter Network. In 2008, 2009, I just referred to it as the patent wars. In 2007, Spotter Network was served with a notice of potential infringement and cease and desist order for patent held by User-Centric IP, LP, which is the intellectual property division of AccuWeather. So AccuWeather had a patent for, you can see this, so for a meteorological alert system for mobile devices and users that includes a weather information service for analyzing meteorological data, generating device-specific weather alerts, and transmitting the alerts to a set of relevant devices is disclosed. Given at this time they had a product called Bumblebee, which essentially was a cellular-enabled PDA. Who remembers what a PDA is? All right, thank you. Yeah, this is pre-BlackBerry. This is Palm. So that was the basis of the patent that was then used to come to Spotted. So that service and device only existed for a couple of years. They still own the intellectual property around that. We had quite a few conversations, legal conversations, spent some of our own personal money to really understand what would it take here. The kind of the quote we were given at the time, so again, this is back, probably about 2008 at this point. The quote we were given was likely to successfully defend this to completion, which we were given the likelihood of a pretty high likelihood to be successful. The cost would be involved with that would be somewhere between $60,000 and $100,000 to successfully defend our patent infringement claim. So we decided to move into the direction of a licensing agreement with AccuWeather around that. That was what effectively ended our relationships that we had with the different weather companies. If anybody knows in the TV weather era, this is back when you actually had choice in graphics systems for your TV weather. There was probably 3 or 4 different graphics options. Nowadays that is not true. But back then we did have relationships with I think it was 3 of them, where they were directly ingesting spotter network data so that they could go straight to air with that. That was all in the idea of, as we know, people who get information about a severe weather threat being real, as in someone has seen it, someone has verified it, we know that people act differently than a radar indicated tornado. And social science tells us that. So that was what we were really trying to do there, was work with some of those graphics providers to say, hey, we immediately could talk about a spotter reported hail, funnel cloud, tornado, whatever that might be. So those all had to end when we moved into the licensing agreement with AccuWeather. I always have to be careful about what words I say for this part. So as we moved into that licensing agreement with AccuWeather, we had to end those relationships. So we had an exclusive nonprofit mission around that. We couldn't be involved in any commercial licensing. Only AccuWeather would be able to do any commercial licensing. We did stipulate that our data would still be able to be used for, like I said, non-profit work, as well as exclusively available to international users. So that was the work that we really did with that, and wanting to make sure that we still had the service intact. We were still able to live essentially and move forward with the service while understanding what those patent pieces were. So I can only talk about this now for the last about 10 months or so because the patent and the NDAs have expired. So I wasn't even able to talk about this actually until just a few months ago. So it's really kind of an interesting piece in the history around some of the early days of spotter network. Where we really, I think, hit our stride, even following up after these days, where, trust me, we were very close to just saying like, yeah, this is too much. We're good. We'll step away. In 2010, as you all know, Minnesota had the largest tornado outbreak recorded in history of the state, with June 17th. So, in the state of Minnesota, 48 tornadoes in one day. Across the event, including kind of the upper Midwest that day, there were 74 tornadoes. We had something like almost a 5-hour segment of the day in Minnesota where there was a tornado on the ground in progress somewhere in the state, period, for about a 5-hour period. So, going back, really looking at that day, it was a pretty pivotal moment for Spotter Network as well. With all of the reports that we had amazing coverage down in this area. You can see just kind of a reanalysis that I put together with this. You see all the different tornado reports leading up through that supercell, which right here is at the point where it was, this is the Conger storm. So at that point, as you see the picture there right now with that report, it was right during the time that storm that was producing EF4 damage. So right on the south side of I-90 there. All the tornadoes. And here you're still able to do this today. The National Weather Service has a direct access to be able to pull this directly into Google Earth or into any other geospatial software where you can pull it in. Here you can see a report from Roger Hill, and this was, one of the first times you could really see this, so the narrative, we've got him right here at this point on the road, and the narrative saying the second tornado touched down 1 mile west of me, the debris cloud just crossing 40th Street. So to have that level of information was brand new at that time. So this is really where we were able to hit our stride with this. And really, what was the first ever GIS-based tornado damage survey, which now today, that's how you do damage surveys. You use the damage assessment toolkit, which is a completely GIS-based damage assessment kit. So that's just the way you do damage surveys now. We actually published a couple papers around this. Myself and Lisa Schmidt presented at the National Severe Weather Workshop that next spring around that work. That's where we learned about the DAT being developed actually in the Atlanta Peachtree office at that point. And so we really, that's kind of where some of this, the way we work today kind of started right around then. Also, Patricia Blair Allison et al. Published in the Electronic Journal of Meteorology with the National Weather Association, talking about Spotter Network as well. And again, that's that GIS basis to severe weather, which there again, that was right in its infancy. But really, some interesting time, be able to do some peer-reviewed publishing around the work that we were doing and the impacts that was having in the weather arena. So, 2012, another big time. So just skip a couple years ahead. A lot of conversations started in 2010 and 2011. After we published in both of those pieces and presented the Severe Weather Workshop down in Norman, started to really see a lot more conversation happen. We signed a formal Memorandum of Understanding with the National Weather Service in 2012, really talking about that our missions are aligned, making sure that we are doing pieces, things to kind of help serve to each other, and think about what some of that, that our missions are in step, as well as then any future developments that would happen would have Spotter Network in mind. That's where, really almost from the start with the first NWS chat program had Spotter Network data integrated in, so the Weather Service was seeing that immediately. If you don't know if NWS chat doesn't ring a bell, so the National Weather Service as well as partners have an internal chat application. It used to be run on open source software. A few years ago it switched over to Slack. So now it's Slack. If you use that at work, over Teams or whatever, those sorts of chat programs. So they use Slack, and it's NWS and partners only that are on it. It also ingests automatically all of the Spotter Network data into their data stream so that they have that available to them to really help move things along a little bit faster. So that was a big change in 2012. Then, over the next few years, we had something happen that none of us saw coming. Unfortunately, some tragedies in the storm chasing world. Unfortunately, the reason that we became really more broadly well known is certainly not a reason that any of us would want to be true. And that really was a couple of the significant losses that we had. In 2012, Andy Gabrielson, who probably at that point was probably one of the more famous chasers around. He was the person who was chasing everything everywhere, and you knew if there was a severe storm, Andy was on it. He was driving back home from chasing in Texas and was killed on the freeway in Oklahoma by a drunk driver. So then the idea came out of that, of writing his initials out as a remembrance on it. That idea stuck for quite some time, and then certainly then when we lost Tim, Paul, and Carl, sorry, that one still gets me to actually say that. When we lost Tim, Paul, and Carl, doing the initials across the Central Plains brought Spotter Network a lot of notoriety. There again, I think it reminded a lot of people that we existed at that point. We had a lot of media coverage on that. Myself as well as a couple other folks from the board of directors were on, had several media impacts around that. So it did help the Spotter Network, certainly not for a reason that any of us would ever want to think about. So, and then lastly, the one that I kind of talked about here is when Bill Paxton passed away. And so certainly, even though I didn't start chasing because of Twister, I certainly love the Twister generation. I started chasing in 1997. And Twister coming out just the year before. I've been following Bill passing after complications from heart surgery. Again, we had Spotter Network had quite a few media hits around that. Probably the biggest piece is, unfortunately, this also happened, it was like the day before the Academy Awards. And so actually several media stations picked this up as part of the Academy Awards events the next day. Probably the biggest piece is that evening during their red carpet coverage, I was on BBC with that, talking about the Spotter Network and how we were recognizing Bill and what that looked like for, kind of what was the impact around storm chasing, what was the impact around severe weather. There's so many, not only chasers, but people who are, working for the National Weather Service today, our meteorologists, look back to Twister as that kind of eureka moment, maybe, of that was something that they saw themselves being able to do and went forward and did that. So then you go ahead, zoom forward all the way to today, of where when Twisters came out here 2 years ago now, of also having kind of some of that, for a good reason. I was I was asked to participate in some of the marketing work for Twisters, was able to look at both the event that they had here at the IMAX Theater here in Prairie, with the day before the premiere, and really being able to do some of that. The week before, it premiered in Europe. It was kind of an interesting release. They released in Europe a week before they released in the United States. And actually getting to be on BBC Radio 6, which is their morning show, with Glenn Powell, and kind of talking about there again what they were, because they wanted to do a real storm chaser in the movie storm chaser kind of thing. So been able to do that and been able to keep up with Glenn a little bit every once in a while, so we've kind of done through time as well. So, of course, Glenn was kind of one of the it actors there for a couple of years, both with Twisters and just coming out of Top Gun Maverick, and all of that work that we had been doing at the time. So, let's see. One thing that I'll also talk about, and this was a piece where I think it was kind of the data for good, was after the El Reno tornado, the next day, Ryan got a call from the emergency manager in the area that they had heard rumors of storm chasers being impacted by the tornado. And so what we actually did is went into our spotter network database. We pulled all of the locations of chasers that were in the area. We did a bounded area of chasers that had reported in the area, but then have not reported since, basically. So this was a day later with that. Out of that came down to a group of about 8 chasers that we then followed up. We had their emergency contact information, as you're required to put in at least one phone number into Spotter Network. We had that information, started to do some work, and that's where, unfortunately, that's when we found out what had happened. And that was really hard. That was one of those pieces of you're doing data work until you realize that you're probably one of the first people in the world to know that one of your friends was killed. So really kind of the personal impact and thinking about that, but we did have the data, thankfully, to find out some other folks that had been impacted, severely injured. Luckily, they were able to get help, and we were able to follow up with that. That was the second time that did that sort of data work with Spotter Network. Somebody in the room probably is going to recognize this one. Stuff that we never thought about when we started Spotter Network is the AntCam videos. And actually seeing the radar, actually seeing how spotters react to it, and what happens with it. So, if you don't recognize the date, June 21st, 2025 is Enderlin.
Well, it's spanned 2 days.
So it's Enderlin. Enderlin EF5, then moving into the derecho, I'd call it an XDW, extreme damaging wind event in the prevention area, transitioning into a long derecho. So again, something that we never, I can 100% admit that we never saw coming around what that looks like. But very interesting. There's actually a working group right now doing some work around this, because we know we don't have the dense sensing network that we need to understand when a storm is performing or not performing in the field, and whether our models are correctly handling the environment or not. There is a group doing actually some work using Spotter Network data now and actually running it through an ML model, so doing some machine learning around this and actually integrating that in of saying, here is a storm, should be producing, we're in a tornado watch box, this storm, all of a sudden you have chasers moving away, that's actually going to lower confidence around warning on a storm based upon the chaser actions being taken or not taken around the storm. So kind of there again, yet another interesting take of kind of producing this data and never thinking that that was going to be one of those outcomes with that. So let's see. Moving on, 2017 into 2025, so kind of the last few years here. mPING, winter weather, and change. So through the late teens, Spotter Network continued with adding additional members to the advisory panel, broadening our involvement with the weather community, and then also our demographics change. Reviews to reports all of a sudden became controversial. Storm chasers, especially notable storm chasers, did not appreciate when their reports would be graded in an unfavorable manner, and would make fairly loud social media posts about that. Where then we had to talk about that. We both needed to get some more strict standards in place and how we were evaluating that, and we were going to keep doing it. That was what the board decided, and how we continue to move forward with that. Of like, yep, we need to tighten up how we're doing review because this network is about learning. So plenty of chasers have never seen what the National Weather Service side of their reports look like. Plenty of chasers have not, maybe don't understand of words that you use or the way you're phrasing it, of actually putting in a report can cause additional ambiguity in the warning process instead of providing clarity, which is what we hope that reports do. So we continue to do that. We continue to do that work. If you're not a Spotter Network member, basically it's 3 grades of a report. It's a good report, meaning we don't have any improvements recommended for it. It's an okay report, meaning there's nothing wrong with it, but could be improved. For an example of that is reporting hail and just the diameter of the hail. So it's an okay report. There's nothing wrong with that. It's great to know that there's 1 inch hail falling there, but a little bit more could say what's the amount, or when did it start, or some of that type of stuff. And then there's the bad reports, which if you receive 3 bad reports within a month, that will actually disable your account. So it kind of goes to the other side of that. If you make a report that gets 3 bad grades, and there again, we're trying to do a voting system on this as well. So your report to be overall graded at any of those levels has to get 3 grades from the advisory panel to go either way. So you'd have to get 3 reds for your report to be removed from the system and for you to kind of be put in the penalty box. Also, Spotter Network discontinued winter weather reporting due to both the kind of the invention and the rise of mPING, which if you don't know, mPING kind of really came about as dual pole Doppler radar began to be fielded to help as the calibration methodology for the new algorithms that dual pole. mPING also ran into some of the same licensing issues that we did. If you might remember mPING, it was a great service, really skyrocketed in use, and then all of a sudden went completely dark for 3 weeks. It was when the legal team really became involved. And then came back with, let's just say, a very similar worded language to our use, acceptable use policy. So then kind of later on, kind of following up with that, is really due to false reports and follow-up investigations, the ability to manually set locations was removed. This effectively ended the ability for us to do the tributes and stuff like that. Was because of people maliciously setting manual locations on the Spotter Network. So that really kind of ended that. I'm only willing to have so many conversations with field agents with the FBI before I'm yeah, done with that. So that's when we move on from there. We also had to do some updates just around how we do information. As everybody well knows, cybersecurity today is a completely different thing than it was 20 years ago. We also, because we have members of the network from Europe, even though we don't officially support Europe, them just being citizens of the EU means we do need to comply with GDPR we have that. In 2025, following the discontinuation of the X API, Spotter Network moved over to Blue Sky for all of our reporting, which of course became kind of a lightning rod of like, we're making a political statement in some way, and like, no, X just got rid of their API, so we're not able to post there anymore automatically. That was what was being used by a lot of both National Weather Service offices as well as media organizations to be able to pull that data together and make something of that from a publicly available source. So that was that move over to Blue Sky. That's where we still are today. So every report that's made is automatically published to our spotterNetwork.org account on Blue Sky, so that it's publicly available for everybody. We're still hoping to do some work eventually. We were probably about 70% code complete on working with the Twitter APIs to be able to integrate images in with Spotter Network reports. That's one of the long-standing feature requests, both from the Weather Service as well as from field spotters. But we also do not want to get into the business of storing images, because storing images on the internet also goes south really fast, unfortunately. So, and we just don't have the level of personnel to do the real-time policing of imagery. So we just can't go there. So what we're really working on is an API combination, and now working with a couple of our partners and do that work. So just like in the episode, in the latest issue of the Blue Northern, looking at, we kind of, it had gotten quiet for a while, and like new weather apps coming to app stores and kind of into use. Whereas now, really just in the last, not even a year, like 6 months or so, there have all of a sudden been some new apps really coming into the space, whether they're radar apps or forecast model apps or whatever. Really seeing kind of a resurgence there again, kind of that next generation of apps coming in. And so we're looking at some some unique possibilities there. The main app that we work with on a day-to-day basis is RadarScope. The head person who works on RadarScope is great to work with. We talk often about how can we do this better, how can we do this different, what are some of the APIs available with it. There will be a couple things that we're excited to talk about soon, as soon as they are announced by the platform that's going to allow us to do some fun stuff here in a couple weeks. So we'll hopefully be able to talk about kind of there again how we can bring some images to reports here. We need a couple base technical things to get there, which I have it on good authority to here. So that's where we are right now. That's where we're looking at. Just some numbers. So like, how big are we and what are some of the things happening right now? Here are a look at our reports over all time. So in our 20 years of reporting, we've had just shy of 60,000 severe weather reports made to us. That's not including the winter stuff, because we did winter for a while. That's not including any of that data. So looking at all that, just shy of 5,000 tornadoes have been reported through Spotter Network, 3,500 funnel clouds. Probably not surprising at all. Our biggest number is hail, over 15,000 reports of hail, and wind and flood as well. So really kind of that big number. This number was the number from early March when I had to turn my presentation in for the Iowa conference. We were at 106. We're now up over 110,000 members of the network. Report reviews. This is where just a huge shout out to the volunteers on our advisory board, our advisory panel, and our board of directors. All of these reviews that come in as well, I think this helps bring some scope to, if you haven't seen, there are entire Facebook groups dedicated to bad Spotter Network reports. We know that they happen. We know that people sometimes are just not responsible enough to put information out there. But I think it speaks volumes that the number of ratings that we've given overall, are, what are you, about 130,000 good and acceptable reviews to 17,000 bad reviews. This is the number of reviews. So ideally, every report, we aim for every report having 5 reviews.
Yeah, we gotta get out here.
So that's kind of the amount of scale that we're really talking about is, that 17K versus, 130K or so. So lots of reports, some of the things that are really happening there. So where are we at now? Where are we going in the spotter network over the next few years? Data availability, that is why we exist, is to make data available. For the National Weather Service offices especially, spotter networks reports are available now in NWS Chat 2.0. The data has been available in NWS Chat 2.0 since last summer. We now have our own weather bot within Slack, so you can query it and do all of those fun things that Slack allows you to do with the weather bot implementation in NWS Chat. NWS offices, we have our data available in a special private Gibson Ridge place file available. We're part of the Convective Warning Improvement Project that really makes a lot of data available for weather service offices independently. If you haven't been in a weather service office, you see their warning stations, almost without exception, now have 2 additional screens. Usually it's one above and one to the side that are running GR2 Analyst Edition. So they have Gibson Ridge data available all the time, and that's really how they are in real time seeing some of those pieces. Just has some of that flexibility where they can within AWIPS have a warning drawn up and ready to go, but then wait and see one more scan or maybe even just one more elevation come in over on GR2 Analyst on the side to make a warning decision. And as we know, making a decision to not issue a warning is an even more impactful decision than to actually issue a warning. So really wanting to make sure we have all that data available. We have kind of the public data availability on our website. Whether you're a member or not, you can get those place files out on our website, and the amount of data that moves through that is astounding at times. One thing we're looking for right now, Spotter Network really does need another developer, someone who might be interested in stepping in to help us develop the next generation of the Spotter Network platform. We have been doing work slowly on this over time, as I've already talked about. We've had a couple fits and starts along the way with some partners that didn't work out, and kind of with that media piece. But we really are looking for who can help us develop that next Spotter Network 2.0 platform. So reach out to myself or Ryan if anybody is interested in that. We'd love to really bring them on board as we start looking at what's next. So research and data mining, we have. I mentioned this a little bit earlier on. I may kind of lead on that one a little bit, but really some current exploration happening around, again, some of those machine learning AI pieces around what are the spotters actually doing around storms as an early indicator of whether that should help you with a warning decision. Like I said, we really need folks to come help us out. All right, so how can you participate? First of all, sign up at spotternetwork.org. Who all here is already spotternetwork.org in person? Practically everybody. All right, fantastic. Well, thank you all. That is exactly what we need. When you're on a storm, if you can turn Spotter Network on whether it's a mobile or whatever device that you have to be able to report your location while you're on a storm, that's being part of the process. Take your class, pass the test. Yes, even if you have, for example, you've passed, the class from a Metro Skywarn class, you still have to take the spotter network class. I guarantee you'll have no problem with that if you've already done a full class and you're, solid on your fundamentals of storm spotting. You're not gonna have any kind of a problem with our test. We, through our agreement, our MOU with the National Weather Service, we're required to maintain our database. And that actually is, again, one of those pieces that people don't understand, is like there is no main database of Skywarn spotters. Skywarn spotters only exist in those local databases, whether that be Metro Skywarn, whether that be, a Skywatcher number with the National Weather Service office in Chanhassen. Those are single points and islands of data, which we are not allowed to accept any of those other trainings to report through our system. So a National Weather Service meteorologist wants to sign up for a spotter network account to report, they have to take our training. We purposefully built the system to not be able to be short-circuited on that. So that's kind of something we hear a lot from folks. Like, I've already done the class. Here's my certificate. Can't you just get me reporting capabilities? No, I mean that's on purpose. Start reporting. We have the Windows Spotter Network client, which is continuing to kind of slide down in the amount of use on that. As more and more people just move to whether it be a tablet or some other type of platform that they're using to chase. So for mobile, our top two usage, like I mentioned, Weatherfront has been on a big growth curve as far as the number of folks that are utilizing it to report through us. But by far, the vast majority of all of our reports today are coming in through radar scope. So it's just really the big one out there, and like I mentioned, we have a great relationship with them, and we talk often when they're in the development. When they're in development cycle, we're talking at least weekly through that. Like most weather applications, they kind of go into a much slower release cadence this time of year because you don't want to board your app right in the middle of heavy, severe weather season. So, but that's where we really look at, and that's how you can participate. That's what we're looking at, and that's all I have for you tonight. So, if there's any questions, I'd love to take any of them, or if you want to have a conversation or whatever folks are kind of interested in. That's everything about Spotter Network in our 20 years. So,
John, I got a question. Back after 9/11,
yeah.
some federal agency, and I don't remember which one, set up a very intense program for training, reporting, avenues how to report, with the national, with the trucking, over the road trucking firms.
Yeah.
I was part of that when we got it set up. Every trucking firm in the state of Minnesota was part of the Minnesota Trucking Association, joined amongst most of the ones in the Midwest that I was familiar with at that time. And it was very good for a while, and looking under bridges, looking under packages, whatever. And it was a great reporting. I don't know what happened to the reports, but it was a way, and they set up a method to do this. Mm-hmm. And I'm just thinking, you got so many over-the-road truckers out there, and that's my background for 50 years. Is there any way to use it? They may think of ever pulling those guys in that are still operating.
Yeah, actually, we have quite a few members who are OTR truckers. I mean, it's yes. If you watch the data, you can certainly see folks in what corridors they're generally driving on. So we do have a good number of over-the-road truckers who are using our system. Yeah. Certainly, we'd always love to have more. Some of that becomes the piece of right now, especially those folks are, with the requirements and with your CDL licensing, are scared to have any screens anywhere within site just because of the aggressive enforcement that some jurisdictions have decided to take into that. So that is one thing that I've had a couple conversations about. That at least that's what's called for, is like Yep, I would have to have another screen in view for that to be running, and it's not willing to.
Well, that program basically was observation.
Yep.
And
Yep.
the trucking firms themselves sponsored it, brought in trainers in their location, and every truck driver that was hired at that time had to go through this. That's a half an hour, maybe an hour.
Yep.
And they were reporting on what they saw out, and there wasn't any screens or anything more technical, but just reporting, which
Yeah.
is, with that technology,
Right.
it's still eyes on what's going on.
Mhm.
Just not gonna be helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's, yeah, we have to think about that is and what the sustainability path for that, because just like that system, where we kind of, I mean, they kind of folded that under CERT to some extent, and then, yeah, I don't know what the current status is.
That's interesting.
Yep, for sure. Yeah.
John, when you say the quality of the reports have been, let's say, 2006, 10, 15, 20, and now, they've gotten better, or they're same, or you see more bad reports?
I would say overall they're about the same. I would say unfortunately the only real change that we have seen there is you've seen some small groups of individuals decide to take it upon them and themselves and their friends to report garbage essentially, and they do it together. Some sort of a joke, I guess, because it's all about the balls, I guess, but I would say, unfortunately, what it is, and that's probably what's driving some of the narrative around that, is we have had a small number of just the ridiculous ones, like we had one here a couple of days ago, a person, reporting, oh gosh, what did they report or something, there was something broken, and I think it's my heartbeat or something like that, some stupid, just stupid type posts, but, so we had that, that's the thing that actually has been over the years, a really active conversation in the advisory board committee of what we really have tried to do is just more or less quietly make those go away. We don't talk about the administrative actions that we take, we don't talk about, yes, we banned that person that did the thing, we just make it go away. And that's an act, that's still an open conversation that people say, well, no, you should say something, make an example of it, or, make whatever, you might want to do that. It's like,
Don't stoke the pot.
I, that's not what I believe is the right direction to do with that, because yeah, exactly what you said, yeah, you're just giving them an opportunity to make it an even bigger thing, instead of just no, they silently go away. So, I would say overall, though, the quality of reports, I think is all the same, but unfortunately, there's that layer of kind of extreme noise that has been introduced, I'd say, in the last 7 years or so, 7 or 8 years. I mean, which we've seen with society, I mean, kind of a post-COVID society in America, as, it's this extremism piece, whether you're talking politics, whether you're talking belief systems, whether you're talking anything else, just moving more towards these fringes with some of that stuff, and that's what we see.
I'm just curious what your relationship with Allison House, or their name now.
Yeah, what their house.
Because you mentioned that, as I imagine it's a significant funding challenge every year to host the servers and web services. So is that a good relationship? You see it sustainable, or are you kind of navigating other sources for that being a nonprofit?
Yeah, at least as of today, we see that as a sustainable relationship, that's, I talk with Ryan all the time. So we talk, right now, it's working, with that, that relationship is working, I'm like, yeah, certainly over time, we're going to have to be thinking about that. That's part of why we're wanting to refactor some of the code, is we can certainly see some efficiencies that we could do, in the database. Certainly the as the database was built, it was never intended to be built for, 110,000 accounts in it. There's, you can jump down the rabbit hole of database administration if someone would like, and probably gonna take another year for that one, but yeah, that's, just the way the database is engineered right now was never engineered for 110,000 users. But that's what, that's there again, why we really are hoping to see some of that technical side of this. We know we have to do some factor to make this a sustainable and growth type opportunity. Yeah.
I got a couple, so when you see the number of people registered with Spotter Network go up, is that translating into a similar increase in reports, or is the reports staying more flat? Because it's maybe your core group of people that are reporting more than the general public. And then my second question is, do you have an estimate of what your record is for the number of location reports in a single day?
Oh, that's an interesting data point. I can think of, it's probably one of 3 different days I can think of when it was. Because I can at least infer that just upon how we had to scale our infrastructure to support it. I don't have that specific number, but that'd be an interesting data. That'd be an interesting data experiment. You might have just maybe do some new puzzling here. Yeah, let me do that. Watch our social medias. We'll see if we can come up with that. To your first question, I think, yes, we've seen growth, and I would say we've seen probably about, when you look at the number of new accounts that you're doing, I'd say we're seeing maybe a 10% of that growth in the actual type of reports that are happening with it. So I think you are seeing new people come in as maybe some other people are just scaling out, whether it's just be out of the weather hobby or they don't chase as much anymore. Like me, you're just too busy, you don't chase vacations anymore, and so you don't report as much as you used to. I think that's kind of the trend we've seen though, is that, yep, we're seeing decent growth on accounts, but the actual growth on the number of reports and even location reports is probably more like about a 10% of that type of a growth piece, if that gives you a little bit of an idea around that. Yeah.
One more question.
Is there an average age group or age of people that are part of the network?
I can't answer that question because we very purposefully do not collect that, because that would put us into a whole new category of the type of data protections that we would need to put in place for GDPR.
Just curious.
Yeah, you of course, like everyone, we saw huge growth, in the kind of the early to mid teens. We saw, almost huge growth there for a few years with that. So I think you can probably infer kind of what our demographic looks like with it, and I think a lot of those folks probably look at me. But what we have to do is keep reinventing, and that's what's really hard when you're an all-volunteer organization, is how you keep reinventing so that you're still relevant for the next generation of folks working on it. So, yeah.
All right, in the interest of time, I'm sure John would be willing to answer whatever questions you have via email or, so if you have more.
Reach out, especially if you're a developer, reach out, john@spotternetwork.org. We can chat either, if you've got a question, probably, like I said, from Tony's question here, that'll probably have to be something that we'll have to do in our social media now. So, we've been so quiet this year, we really only had, a couple real big severe weather days, and Central Plains severe weather days, so we'll see how that goes, as the chaser community in Minnesota here keeps saying, that we're worried that all the throngs of chasers are gonna be coming to the northern plains this year because the southern plains were too quiet. Of course, if we keep getting these Canadian air intrusions, who knows how this summer's gonna.
I'm fine with this. Can
No.
stay like this through track season and the trap shooting season, this place sucks. Are you interested in the only umbrella we have from the EMS left,
Okay.
or one of our new insulated mugs?
Oh, I'll do one of those.
Alright, so again, thanks so much
Yeah, absolutely, thank
for
you.
doing this.